more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
Hello, and welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. We're on News Talk 1590 KVTA, and I'm in the studio here with my cohort, Todd Waddington. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Susan. Good to be here.
I just want to let everybody know before we launch into our topic tonight, which is CrossRoads, we just rebooted our website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, and it looks fabulous.
It looks incredible. I went on it yesterday. I had no idea. You sent me an email. I jumped on there, and I was like, wow.
Wow.
Look at what we're doing here.
Who knew? I didn't know, you know. And what's exciting is that the homepage is up and playing and running well, and our web designer, Tim Rosedahl of Digital Inc. Media, is furiously working on the radio show pages and the inspiration pages. We're going to have video pops on a lot of things. We'll have some teaching moments for people if anybody out there wants to do a little homework as they're listening to Living Your Inspired Life. And I think I'm on fire. I just think it's awesome.
It is. It is a great website.
Yeah. And so thank you. A shout out to Tim. Thank you, Tim, for all that you do. So we are talking about crossroads in our lives. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because I've been in a crossroads, and it feels like it's been a long time that I've been standing at this crossroads. And the relaunch of Living Your Inspired Life on News Talk 1590 is now I've chosen the road I'm on again, So oftentimes, so let me just talk about what I think crossroads are. Usually it's a place where two or more roads converge, and you stand in the center of that, when you get to the I keep thinking of North by Northwest and the crossroads with Cary Grant standing there.
Powerful image, yeah.
Yeah, waiting. It kind of feels like that in that when we come to a crossroads in our lives, sometimes we think we're driving the car and we're actually arriving at the crossroads. We know we're getting there. Mm-hmm. But other times, and in my life lately, a little while ago, I came to this crossroads and it felt like it snuck up on me. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, why am I here? I did not want to be here. How did I choose to get here? And oftentimes then in hindsight and doing the work that we talk about on Living Your Inspired Life of dropping in, going within yourself and checking out what your inspiration is telling you, what your inner world is all about. Oftentimes we'll realize, of course I was meant to be at this crossroads. Of course I was on that path. But oftentimes it doesn't feel like that.
Well, I think often what happens is we get through that experience and then we look back on it and say, oh, that was a crossroads.
Yeah.
A diagnosis, a relationship, a bankruptcy. It doesn't always have to be something horrible, a marriage,
A good thing or a not so good thing.
Crossroads, yeah.
But oftentimes people, so I've been doing a lot of work with people that I have several clients that are empty nesters. And so now they're, with their spouse going, oh, it's just you and me. What do we do? and what I'm noticing, or I'm working with people that have crossed over a particular decade threshold, like 50s and 60s, that kind of a thing. And, or they're coming up to it, and now that I've been through some of this stuff, I'm like, oh, here we come. They're coming to that crossroads where you're going to have to stand and go, who am I now? Where am I going? Why did I do what I did? Do I want to change course or do I want to stay the course? And what I notice is when people come to those crossroads, it feels dramatic. So even if it's a happy thing like a wedding, I went to this great wedding in May, fabulous, big to do, and the day after, the bride, I could tell I'm so sorry, but I could tell that she's sitting at the table with all of us, and behind her eyes, there's this thought, what did I just do? Oh my God, what did I just do? And so it happens all the time in certainly big life events, but even smaller events. We come to this place of, what path am I going to take now?
Mm-hmm. Well, and in that bride's defense, I know that, just having done theater for years, you have that big opening night, and the next day there's that kind of letdown often for the run. You go into the run and nothing's like opening night.
Right,
and,
you're right.
So it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It's just that included in that crossroads are many, many dynamics. It's not like just one thing and everything's going to be better.
Right. Right. Well, what I want to encourage people to do is, when you come to a crossroads in your life, to be there, to become fully present that you're there. And a lot of that is, so I can only speak from my life experience on living your inspired life, that in my life, and this crossroads I've just navigated, I've navigated a divorce, and I really tried to stand fully present in every moment of it, whether I was feeling fear or anger or guilt or, shame or whatever, and then feeling some, freedom about it. But to just be present. And what I really did was I was encouraged to really feel the emotions I was feeling so that they wouldn't download in my body. And we talked a little bit about this last week. So they really wouldn't download in my body as a dis-ease and outpicture in some other way, because I was ignoring those emotions. I'll tell you, that's a hard thing to do, be present with your emotions.
Oh, just to sit with it? I talked about that a little bit last week, that there's light and there's dark in everything. And I'm just really beginning to take notice of the darkness and be able to sit with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets uncomfortable, but I've discovered through teachings and learnings that the only way through it is through it, and I have to allow that darkness to sort of go through me. It doesn't mean I indulge or I go out on a drinking bender or anything, quite the opposite. It's a matter of sitting with it, being with it, and allowing it to process, to see because eventually the light will filter back in.
I agree with you, absolutely. And what I notice is when people are not present with their emotions, or when I wasn't, and some of my clients, they become deadened. Then they're not really living. You're not living life, and at all. You're just putting it on pause because you don't want to feel the feeling that you think is behind the experience. You don't want to feel the fear or the anger or the guilt. You just don't want to feel it. So everything gets put on pause, and all of a sudden you're just kind of floating through life, and years can go by. And this happens often too for people when they show up at a crossroads. It's all of a sudden, because it's an awakening. When we get to that place where one thing is complete, whether it's rearing children or a job or a marriage or somebody's in your life has passed on, made their transition, there is something that is complete, and yet we haven't necessarily been present to the emotionality of it to process it. And so when we come to a crossroads, it's very important, in my experience at least, to become consciously aware, to stand there consciously aware of what has just transpired or what is transpiring. And sometimes, like in the event of a divorce, sorry, that's all I can talk about right now, or a long-lasting illness that ends in a death, it feels like a long time, and it gets very, very uncomfortable for people to be in that experience for a long time. And yet, when you think of the spectrum of life, it's kind of just a short period of time. And this too shall pass.
Well, I hear you say, I love that you used the word awakening, and I'm wondering if whatever, all the stuff that you're talking about now, if being with it, staying with it, is that what leads to the awakening, or is the awakening all of that?
I think it's both, and it depends on the individual. Like for me, I was resisting what was occurring, and then I finally woke up one day and went, oh, oh, it's just done. Oh, and came to peace with it. Okay. And then there was the next part of the ride of, okay, now what do we do? Where do we go? Who am I now with this, without this, and that's still standing at the crossroads, And so then there was like this peeling the layers of the onion, and it was all emotionally being done through me and for me and with me. So I want to encourage listeners, if you're listening to Living Your Inspired Life right now, if you're at a crossroads, we've got some skill sets on our website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, that I want to encourage you to go and explore. It's under the inspiration box, and you can see, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the show tonight. But this idea of being at a crossroads is, in hindsight, right, always a good thing, right? When you come to that place where you have to turn left because you can't keep going straight, or you have to turn right or whatever, in hindsight, then you go, oh, like you said earlier, this, I track back, and that was a really good thing that happened. I hated every moment of it. It wasn't fun, was painful, but now I can see why. So it's about really being consciously present with the isness of life, the what is within us and around us and through us.
And we're never done.
No,
Because the crossroads sounds
yeah.
like it's dramatic. It's very dramatic, and it is dramatic. But it's as if we're going to do it once and then we're done. But you talked about the layers of the onion earlier, and it really is crossroads after crossroads after crossroads, and maybe there are many intersections, and then there are crossroads. But
yeah, that's a good way to put it. I see life as this evolutionary spiral that we just keep moving on, and we can do it kind of deadened and just going through the daily routine, or we can do it being as fully conscious as we possibly can in every moment. And I don't mean that means you're zen in every moment, because it's kind of hard to live a fast-paced life like most of us have and be in the zen. But it certainly is about being consciously awake and aware enough to strive toward that peace, equanimity throughout the day, regardless of what's happening. And that's, it takes practice. Yeah.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I liked what you said earlier about, we don't know what we're going to, we go through life, and then I don't remember how you said it, but what came up for me was how I've done so many things in my life that I didn't think I would ever use, and I would get really distressed about it. Like, for example, I was a waiter for about 10 years after college.
Yeah, me too.
And I thought, when am I ever going to use this skill set? Like, why am I doing this? I was getting really weary about it. And then I can't tell you how many times I was in the middle of running a cabaret series in Philadelphia, and one day I realized this would have never happened if I didn't have that all that background in the service industry, because I needed to know what entertainers needed and how to run a room. And a lot of people couldn't do it. And I patted myself on the back thinking, I really have this skill that I never realized I had until I put this cabaret series together.
I love
and
that.
It came out of this very distressful kind of work that I did for years.
Yeah.
But I knew how to be a host. I knew how to be a waiter. I knew how to do all of those things. And then I knew then how to put this series together, get people into a room that would enjoy it, how to set up the room. And I have no stress when it comes to running things like that. If somebody said, "Can you help me cater this party?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah." I mean, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I could help them easily.
So this sounds to me like what you said just a few minutes ago about the intersections leading to the crossroads. So that sounds like that waiter's gig was part of coming to another intersection to get to the crossroads where now you're going to do this cabaret thing. And it's probably still informing a lot of work that you continue to do. I know that. I know that to be so.
Right.
So I think what I want to encourage everyone is not to be afraid when you come to a crossroad. I ran into a woman just the other day in the post office, and somebody I hadn't seen in a while, and I could tell something was up. And she is navigating a divorce, but as she started to talk to me about it, I could see and feel in her eyes that she was absolutely petrified, literally petrified, so that there was nothing moving forward, like no filing, the house is for sale, but no sale. There was all this stuff that just was in a standstill. And she was, as she started to talk to me about it, her fear started coming up, which of course she didn't want to experience in the middle of the post office. But the fear that now that this decision has been made, now that this completion has happened, that they aren't going to be able to move forward. And I just stood there witnessing for her and with her that there is this place where you have got to, when you're at a crossroads, you've got to surrender. And I mean just let the stuff go, whether it's letting your anger go and having a temper tantrum where it doesn't hurt anybody, including yourself. But, get out a pillow and beat it up and yell and scream, or just sit down and cry and then sit down. In my case, sit down and cry some more and then sit down and cry some more. But because that is the place where, in the surrendering of those emotions and the experience of them and then letting them go, there begins to become an open, clear container for then you to put something new in. But you can't build on top of the garbage. You can't build a new life or make a new choice on top of the old garbage. It just doesn't work. Then you're standing on a landfill, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
And I saw Poltergeist, man. So where, you just don't want to build your stuff on a landfill where everything's constantly changing. You want to build it on a solid ground, on a solid foundation.
Well, and in listening to you, I'm thinking that one of the things that Crossroads implies is movement.
Yeah.
Even if it's the movement of emotions. I tend to get stymied when I'm really overwhelmed. Right now I have a lot of things on my plate, a bunch of just tons of stuff. And I notice that as soon as I go into the activity that's required of me, the fear starts to dissipate, whatever the anxiety level goes down. Mm-hmm. And it's simply because I'm moving, and that movement sometimes I need exercise. I need, and so the movement seems to be a big piece for me, of what Crossroads and moving through Crossroads is about.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because that is what we're saying here, is the movement. So I want to share, this brings up to mind, I just got back, before we started Living Your Inspired Life, I just got back from 10 days in Scotland. And I had no idea what it was going to be like. Scotland was not on my to-do list, go see. But this trip came up, and I went with a group of people that I would never meet before, and it was fabulous. The places the things we saw, and I met this woman. Her name is Mary, Merry.
I love it.
Oh my God, I know. She's awesome. And I had borrowed a book from her, and I went to her room to return the book, and it was early morning. We're getting ready to head out, and she said, "Come in," and she goes, "I'm listening," and I was like, I listened. I didn't hear anything. I'm like, "Okay, Mary, what are you listening to?" And she goes, "I'm listening to the wind playing the building."
I'm sorry.
And I wanted to start laughing. But I tell you, it was a profound perception.
I get it.
Because then she started humming what she was hearing. And all of a sudden, I heard the wind playing the building. And she said, because she knew about Celtic music and she said there's, I don't know anything about this stuff, but she said there's a lot of Irish songs called airs. And she said, now I get it. It's what they were hearing when the wind was moving through the trees or the whatever. And she started humming the tune again, and I heard it. Okay, now I wasn't doing any kind of scotch then.
No, I get it.
But it was amazing. And because of her sharing her experience with me, it shifted my perception. And I now hear things, literally, I hear things differently, because she said that the rest of the trip was just me trying to pay attention to what she pointed out. And I think that's what happens when we're at a crossroads as well, is we've got, It's our opportunity to change our perception. It's our opportunity to hear things differently. It's our opportunity, like if you're in a relationship that's conflicted, that's a crossroads too, right? If you go to therapy, you got to learn to hear things differently. Same with in the workplace. If you've been in a job for forever and you get triggered by other people, it's not necessarily because the other people are the ones doing it to you. It's because you've learned and it's become a habit. You're in a rut, right? And sometimes we are in ruts leading up to the crossroads that no longer allows you to hear or see things in ways that make you happy, in ways that activate your inner creativity, in ways that help you connect heart to heart with another person. And so shifting that perception and listening differently, listening to the air play the building, listening to the tune that it's creating, it can open up doors for you. So that's what we talk about, and that's what we're all about on Living Your Inspired Life. And we're on News Talk 1590 KVTA, and we're talking about how change affects us when we're at a crossroads, yeah?
We are. And, I just have to, say, I was laughing, and I tend to laugh at everything. I'm one of those people who
which is what I love about you.
Right. I mean, I can totally find laughter in just about any topic. But that said, somebody like Beethoven, who was no slouch, wrote music because of what he heard the Pastoral Symphony is all about his walk in the woods. And it's filled with birds and wind and all sorts of stuff.
And there's people that can really hear that. And it wasn't until I met Mary, Merry, and I just love that because she's Mary. It wasn't until she shared her perspective with me that I could open up my eyes and ears and see things differently. And so that's what happens too when you're, at least for me and during my experience of this particular crossroads I just navigated lately, I had tremendous support. And what I mean is I had a couple of friends that I knew I could go to and they would not judge me. And they very rarely gave me advice unless I asked. And I trusted them with my confidence so that they weren't out blabbing away about what my experience is. And then I had other people that I could go to laugh with, that they would point things out. My friend Grace Lovejoy, I would call her up and I didn't even have to say anything and she'd just start laughing about it, which just lightened me up,
right.
And I had other people, counselors and things like that I could go and have a different opportunity to explore what was happening within my life and within myself, because the emotions became so huge, mostly because I had not been addressing them up until now. And I didn't realize I had not been addressing my deep level of anger or my deep level of love. I was just in that monotone of life getting through.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier, that for me, that I haven't noticed that I've gone through a crossroads until I've been through it most of the time. And I think that what you're saying now speaks to something that I have noticed for most of us, most people. We don't know how much pain we're in until we're out of it, Yeah,
because we start tolerating the levels of it, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Because coming out of this now, I really do want to be present with my life in new ways, and have fun. And the realizing the high level of tolerance in so many different areas that I had been holding was also part of the surrendering, okay, I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm not going to tolerate this anger in me, or I'm not going to tolerate that thing that's happening in my outer world, in my workplace or my relationship or with my child. I'm just not going to tolerate it. And what happens when we also hit crossroads is at least for me, there were huge levels of grief, because not only was I looking at divorce, but my son graduated from high school during that time. So there was the empty nest thing happening all at the same time. And just to address just the empty nest part. There's grief. I have a friend whose son is a sophomore up at Washington University, and she just left to take him back for, after the summer. And she said the grief is almost worse than when he graduated because she had him all summer again. It's like he came home and now we have to do it again, just ripping that scab off every time until it heals.
I was smiling because I was thinking of a friend of mine on the East Coast who was just a basket case when she took her first son to college. And then she just took her second son, and now she was a big mess. She was texting me on the way there. And I thought, oh, poor Michael. I was empathizing with her husband.
Yeah, because he's probably going through the same thing,
absolutely,
just
yes.
differently.
Yes.
And I just want to encourage people. It's just, again, we've been saying this, maybe we're hammering too hard, but it's important to feel the feelings. It's so important to feel the feelings because that really is what life is about. Life is dynamic. Life is always dynamic. There's no safe base. When you're a kid and you always had to get to safe base when you're playing tag, there's no safe base in life. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the sense that life is always in this current of change and circulating and swirling in and through and around us. And because it's dynamic, it causes us to change and grow all the time. It causes us to evolve mentally, emotionally, and spiritually all the time. And what happens is in that dynamo of life, we are always at choice. We have this huge freedom to choose and choose again and choose again. And some of the people that I'm working with that are navigating having turned 50 and who am I now and do I really want to stay in this job and what am I going to do with the second half of my life? I'm working with this one client. He's fabulous and he wants a plan. I'm like, oh, dude, there's no plan. You have to be present with what is right now first. And the is you really clear. You're getting clear on this job isn't working for me anymore, and we have an empty nest again. And so instead of trying to have a plan so you can fill up the emptiness, so you can fill up the vacuum that was created, it's really important to take that time as a gift to yourself where you can explore, okay, this is who I've been up until 50. Liked a lot of it, didn't like so much of it. What am I keeping? It's like cleaning out a closet. I'll keep this pair of shoes because I remember dancing the disco in them, but I'm not going to keep the outfit, I'm not going to keep the polyester, and really get clear on what it is you want to bring forward. And so many people don't realize that these decade thresholds that we cross of turning 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, they are definite crossroads. They're not the intersections. They are the crossroads. Mm-hmm. And we spend time leading up to turning 50, and we spend time afterwards going, oh my God, I'm 50 or I'm 60 or whatever it is. And what I want to encourage us all to do is to be really present with, okay, now I'm at choice. I have the freedom to choose whatever I want to do with my life. I am free to make that choice. And if I don't like what I made, like this guy, I'm encouraging him to go slow before he develops a plan. Slowly, do the research he needs to do to figure out what he wants to do for the next 50 years. Yeah. Do that. But don't then say, okay, now I have a plan, I'm going to activate it. Because there's a place of being in the stillness of life, of that still water place where you can really listen to the air playing the building, listen within to that place of inspiration that wants to bubble up through you, that wants to spring up through you and become even more than what you thought your plan was. Which certainly happened. Okay, now I'm digressing again maybe, but it certainly happened when I realized that my marriage was complete because I had a plan. Mm-hmm. I had a plan for the next 50 years. And all of a sudden, it ain't my plan. Mm-hmm. So if I had rushed into another plan, I would still be operating out of the old Susan that got me to that crossroads. And boy, do I not want to repeat a lot of that. Do you know? I really want to be my whole person, who I am as a 50-something-year-old now. Who am I now? Because the choices I made when I was 20 or 30 or 40 led me down to these different crossroads and intersections. And so what do I want to keep and what do I want to leave? Because there's this place. We think of maturity being, okay, now you're 18 and you get to move out of the house, or, you know, now you're a parent. But there's also this inner wisdom, this inner spiritual maturity, if you will, that when we listen to that, informs us in ways that creates such a better life. That's been my personal experience, at least. Such a better life.
Yeah, and it sounds wonderful. And I say it sounds wonderful because what I'm realizing, and then this happens in this show, is that I go into my own process and I realize, I think I'm in the middle of a crossroads. Mm-hmm. You know, I hinted at something last week on the show that I had some physical things going on. And as it turns out, I need an MRI of my lower back now. So I've had an MRI of my shoulder last week. Next week it's lower back. And my male ego, I'll call it, my ego is like battling. You know, the chiropractor said, yeah, let's not do any heavy, no weights now, no lifting. And, you know, I got to be honest, for 8 years I stopped working out. And then 2 years ago, I was so happy to be going back to the gym, to have carved it into my schedule, to be doing that for myself, that I'm really struggling with this.
Yeah.
That's done. Or maybe, I don't know, I'm seeing another specialist tomorrow, and that perhaps it's all about yoga and being gentle, and there's really a battle going on in this. You know, I think it is. It's kind of a crossroads. It's something that I expected in my 60s or 70s,
right,
not at 54,
right,
to be saying, you know what, I'm going to have to start doing this a different way. I have to start eating a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got that report too. I mean, there's a bunch of self-care things that haven't been happening or have to happen in a different way that I'm up against it right now. And it doesn't feel like I can just be still and breathe. And that's exactly what I need to do.
Right.
You know?
It is being still, Todd. I'm sorry. Literally for you, it's going to be being still maybe, but for a little while. But because So what happens is when we're at the crossroads and we're talking about freedom of choice, the crossroads causes us to become self-responsible. And in that self-responsibility, that means that if you have to make health changes, food changes, relationship changes, you become more responsible to yourself. And what I mean is that self within you that is what I like to say is divine, you know? Mm-hmm. And when we become responsible to that divinity within us, that is that breath of life that we live from, then in changing that perception, when you said self-care, I know in my experience when a doctor says you got to do this, I'm like, that's it. I'm not doing it because he told me.
I went home and ate cookies.
Oh, yeah. What's in the freezer?
Yeah. I was like, I don't care if my triglycerides are 300. They're not 300, but they're pretty close.
See, in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, it's filling up the refrigerator, and he told me I can't have it anymore, so I'll just eat everything out, and then I won't buy it again. But it's the same thing, you know. It's so, but for me, in looking at it now as instead of it's somebody telling me I have to do self-care, I am choosing to be self-responsible, which also means if I want to cheat, I'm responsible for it, right? Mm-hmm. And if I want to be healthy, I'm responsible for it. And that's what happens when we face these crossroads. There's a place of needing to step up a little bit more and step up a little bit more. So this is Living Your Inspired Life, and we're on News Talk 1590 KVTA, and we're going to take just a short. Welcome back to Living Your Inspired Life on News Talk 1590 KVTA. I'm Susan Burrell, and I'm here with Todd Waddington, my cohort and master of amazing fun. And we're talking about crossroads in our lives. And I just want to remind people that our new website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, is up and running. So go take a look. And eventually these shows are going to be archived on the site so that you can go back and say, what was it they were talking about? Oh, yeah, I want to remember that. You can go back and listen. So that's happening in our lives. And that's a awesome positive for us.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful site.
So we're talking about crossroads, which really means change, and change often brings up fear for people, you know. And I know for me in the past, when I've become fearful, I become a mule. I sit down, and you cannot budge me. You can't make me change my mind. You can't make me move forward. I'm just going to sit down and say I'm not moving, and that happens for a lot of people. That the fear becomes so immense that the how do we move forward piece, that's why people need a plan. You know, I can only move forward if I have a plan. But sometimes moving forward in life means you don't have a plan.
Right. Well, I think fear for me is the fear of whatever I imagine either happening or not happening. Like it's my ego way of it's usually very limited. Like we were talking before the break
Right.
about this, some physical stuff going on with me, and I think the fear is that I have. I don't know what the exact fear is, but my desire is to have a 30-year-old body in a 50.
Oh, God,
not even
I know.
27 anymore. I'm moving up.
You moved up to 30?
the
That's
bar
good.
to 30.
I was kind of hoping for my 40-year-old body, and she's not there anymore either.
And yeah, it's not going to happen. I can still be slender and 54 and reasonably fit, but it's just not going to be 30.
It's not going to be 30. And that's a good thing, really. We have to wrap our minds around the thing of life continues to move forward, because going back doesn't mean that you're growing. Doesn't mean that you're growing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually at all. It doesn't, So moving forward is the only thing we can do. So I just want to read this quote I have by philosopher Ernest Holmes. That had a lot of meaning for me when I read it. So we'll see if it means something to you as you're listening. One may die from one experience and be born into another in this world. We are learning how to do this by mentally letting go of the old and taking hold of the new. Our mental vision must be guided by the star of hope and not the illusion of despair. So when people are stuck in fear, I think part of that is filled with despair, right? That whatever was good about this thing that's now over, whether it's whatever, a job, a relationship, a life, there's despair because now who am I? Or now what am I going to do? Or what am I going to do without that? What am I going to do without my 40-year-old body? What am I going to do without my marriage or my job? And so that's also what amps up fear. We may have it already, but it amps it up even more. And really, because we're always at choice, this is what I'm trying to practice. I'll have to let you know how I'm doing because it's a challenge. But I'm trying to tell myself that when I feel fearful, it's actually an opportunity to listen. It's to awaken, to choose to become more conscious, because really the fear is trying to tell us something, right?
Yes.
It's that fight or flight thing. The fear is trying to say, watch out, there's, a lion on the horizon that's going to eat you. And so in our daily livingness, that fear is here to inform us that there's something I need to pay attention to.
Yes. Well, I mean, and to be really honest, to come clean here, I know. I know what I'm supposed to do. I said it last week, I know that, and I know that I'm going to be happier. I know this already. That when I decide to do all the things that the doctors are telling me.
So what do you think is the thing that's keeping you stuck then?
because I want to be 30 years old
I
again.
know.
I don't think it's fear of death. I think it's some sort of fear of like being limited in some way. And the idea of my body getting stuck or some physical thing going on.
And
It's
so let's peel this.
uh-oh, here we go.
Because this is what I do, so because what I hear really underneath some of that is that there's some grieving.
Yes,
I'm no longer
definitely.
30.
Yeah,
I'm no longer, I can't buy that time back. I can't go back and undo the mistakes. So
Can't
there's
wear the spandex.
can't wear the spandex. Oh, please don't wear the spandex anymore. Nobody. But
I never owned spandex.
but that I think is I know for me, under the fear, there was a lot of grief. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Why didn't I?
Most definitely.
And then why didn't I appreciate my life back then when I was healthy and svelte? And instead of turning and looking back, going, oh shoot, I should have been paying attention to that. And so then again we become self-responsible and consciously aware as we stand in a crossroads that I get to choose again. I have freedom of choice to choose again. So, all right. So here's some things that I would recommend that I've done personally in these crossroads, and I use this stuff with my clients that I work with, is to become first of all, is to really feel those feelings and let yourself have it in a safe space. If you're in the middle of something, like if you're in the middle of the post office and you feel like crying, excuse yourself and go cry. Don't say, oh, no, I can't do this. Because what happens is that you keep putting a lid on it, and then it becomes a pressure cooker. And same with being angry, or same with feeling guilty or ashamed. You need to take time, go sit in your car, or, close the door to your room and be with what is. And I tell you from personal experience, when you sit down and you really sit with what is going on emotionally, you go through it faster. You go through it. And I've been reading this great book called The Untethered Soul by Mark Singer. Fabulous book, because it talks about unhooking yourself to all those things that causes your heart to close. And because we want to hold on to, whether it's a good feeling or a negative feeling, if it's a negative feeling, we hold on to it. We steel our heart against it so we don't have to feel it, but it's still in there, stuck in our heart. And if it's a good feeling, we hold on to it because we don't want to feel the bad stuff anymore. So wherever we tether ourselves or cling to these emotions, either way, it takes us out of living our life fully, living our life consciously, living our life creatively, and having fun. Just takes us out of all the fun. So in feeling those emotions, you begin to open your heart. You begin to untether your soul. You begin to create space for a clear vessel, if you will. Like I always see like a big bowl, a big golden chalice thing, but to then you can put in and fill it up with what you want to experience, what you want to live. So feeling your emotions is really important. That's when I work with clients, it's about feeling the grief and doing it. And then this other thing that I've been doing for myself, especially once I have cleared out most of that emotional garbage, or at least for that moment or that day, then I go within and I ask, what is my highest good here? What is the highest vision for my life now? This is done. Whatever this is, it's done. What is the highest vision for my life? And how can I embrace it and become it? And then what do I need to release from it? And so that I can really be fully present and be living my most inspired life, be exactly who I was brought here to be. And I think that that's true for everybody. So that particular process is called visioning. And again, it's on livingyourinspiredlife.org. Under the inspiration page, you can, I wrote something up on how to do a visioning, and you can do that. And when you're ready to ask yourself those questions, what is my highest good now? What is the highest idea for my life? And just write whatever comes down to you, whatever shows up. And this is not about creating a plan. That's not what it
Right,
is.
right.
It's about tuning in to your inner wisdom, tuning into that heart center that has all the answers. Because we are beings that already hold all the answers for and solutions for our lives. We just don't know it because we've been trained to look outside of ourselves for our answers. And I'll tell you my personal experience from this, having navigated this for the last couple of years, is that I have not really been able, and I'm going to say it out loud, oh my gosh, I have not been able to say this in truth about myself, but I love myself now. I love myself. I respect myself. It's something I've been working on. Those have been my affirmations for at least 5 years. I love myself. I am loving. It's like ridiculous. I now feel that. I love myself and I'm happy. I'm having fun and I am really good at what I do. I'm really good at what I do.
It's very true.
Isn't that? So who would
All
have
of it.
thunk? And you've been on this ride with me for a while. Who
Yeah.
would have thunk?
Yeah, that's great.
That out of a seeming negative experience, there comes this renewed place of joy and freedom and love and commitment to myself.
I want to ask you a question just so I can, and maybe some of our listeners can get some clarity. When you were talking about feeling the feelings, and then you were talking about a visioning process, is it something you do at the same time, or you want to be clear of those feelings before you go into your visioning process?
Oh, that's a good question, Todd.
Because I think we can be in the midst of strife and vision and still get stuff.
I think you
But,
can. I think you can do it either way. I wouldn't. So what I notice with people that are not attuned to visioning, it becomes again their template for creating a plan. Sometimes I want a vision so I know what I have to do, and it's not about that. So if you are in the emotional turmoil and you sit down and just with your journal or a piece of paper, what is the highest good for me right now, and just write it down while you're in the midst of it, that could be vastly helpful because it might be, you might get, okay, it's time for you to take a nap.
Yeah,
a
bath
and that's
yeah.
part of how we check in with ourselves. But it also can be, it is hugely helpful, at least for me, after I navigated a lot of that stuff, because when I was in the midst of it, of the grief and the anger and the fear, there wasn't anything. It was very hard for me to have even 5 minutes of time where I could see clearly, and then listen. So, which is why so the other piece when you're navigating a crossroads, why I really encourage people to develop a support group for yourself, and that looks like 1 or 2 friends that love you unconditionally and are non-judgmental, and so that they're not giving you advice. Because what I've noticed is especially when people are in pain, the people that love us the most want us not to be in pain.
Fix it.
Yep.
I got to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
Here, let me tell you what you need to do. No. See, my parents have been fabulous all my life.
Yeah.
And I've had to ask them, I'm not sharing any of this so you can tell me what to do. I'm just sharing it because this is where I'm at right now. And I just need to be able to share it, and they've been awesome about listening. So find a couple of people in your life that you trust, that will listen, that will hold your confidence, because also what happens when we process stuff, there becomes this energy that starts to build, and that energy, I can't even describe what it is really, for lack of a better word, we'll just call it energy. It begins to move within you and through you and around you, so that as you're emptying out your emotional stuff, it creates a synergy. The energy becomes synergy that then opens you up. So your perception that we talked about earlier, your perspective can then focus on the new road you're to take, the new path. So so sharing with just a couple people is important. If you go out and start telling everybody your story, then what you're doing is you're not utilizing that positive energy that could result from sharing your deepest fears and grief with close friends. It dissipates, and you'll be left standing at that crossroads for a very long time wondering, what am I supposed to do? Who am I now? All of that. So So make sure that you've got a container that's tight enough so you can create the synergy as you're letting go of these, as you're experiencing these emotions and letting them go. Then that vessel becomes huge, and then that's when the visioning questions can really help you in just kind of refocusing and refocusing and refocusing. And the other thing is, going through a crossroads, going through a change, it's important to how do I say this? To make sure that you are supported, well, like you were talking about physically, with proper health care, proper self-care, making sure you're eating well, that you're resting when you need to, because it takes a lot of emotional and psychic and physical energy to move through processes where a trauma has happened. You know, like if you've lost your job, it's okay if you sit on the couch for a couple of weeks. Oh my God, the wife or the husband that's listening to this is going to tell their spouse to get off the couch. But I think it's if you do it consciously, it's okay if you do it consciously. You need to rest. You've just completed something. It was maybe a completion you didn't want. And it's time to take a little time for yourself to just be with it and rest with it before you go rushing out to whatever the next thing is. Now, I'm not telling you not to go look for a job.
Right.
But if there is a place where some sort of a depression sets in, some sort of a sadness sets in, it's important that you honor yourself by sitting with it. So... did that make sense?
Yeah, and I have a question about sitting with it, because you had brought this up earlier before the visioning thing. Is there anything that you do personally? Do you ask yourself questions, or, you know, because I don't know if it's just a guy thing or if just in general, but for me, it's kind of scary, the idea of just sitting with my feelings. And,
yeah, I know.
And what do I do with that then? Do I just breathe? Do I ask myself questions that might lead me through it?
I think breathing is the most important thing. Breathing and recognizing this emotion's coming up for a reason.
And not
just
to judge
breathing
it,
through
maybe, because I tend to beat myself. Sometimes I can beat myself up for already feeling bad, and then that's not, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I hear what you're saying. It's important when you're going through this stuff not to beat yourself up. It's coming up for a reason, and it's coming up, you know, we talk about truth being revealed so it can be healed, right? You know, so it comes up so then you can go. So basically then you become a choice. But when you have those emotions come up, just breathing through it, that's really the only thing the only thing you can do, and allow yourself the time to experience it. We just are in such a fast-paced life that the shutdown is automatic. So it's about becoming aware of when we're shutting down our heart or shutting down our mind or any of those things. So I thank you for asking those questions.
Yeah.
This is why I love having you in the room with me.
Well, I want to break through this crossroads and have a better life.
Well, I'm sure within by the next time we talk on air, it will have already resolved itself. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is Living Your Inspired Life. We're here on Sundays, and we are on News Talk 1590 KVTA. And please go to our website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, and you can email us through there, contact us through there if you have questions after listening to the show. Todd and I are happy to be your support system. So thank you for tuning in and tuning up and developing your power perspective. And I'm just going to say, and so it is, namaste.